Hello everyone, back again with movie and tune recap. Today, I'm going to explain an American psychological horror thriller film from 2024, titled Skeletons in the Closet. Spoilers ahead, so watch out and take care. The movie begins in a settlement, where we meet a family of three: Mark, who works in a delivery company, Valentina, who is a nurse, and their 6-year-old daughter, Jenny, who is battling cancer. Jenny's goldfish has just died, leaving her disheartened, and as she stares at the fish, a woman in a white dress appears behind her. Valentina, in another room, hears Jenny calling to her. She rushes to Jenny's room, where she sees a woman in white dress behind Jenny before disappearing, leaving Valentina in shock. Soon after, Mark joins them, and Jenny tells them about her goldfish's death. Mark promised to replace it with a puppy, despite Valentina's objections, and Mark convinces her, and she eventually gives in. Mark then heads to work after receiving a call from his boss, and to his surprise, Mark receives devastating news: he's been fired, though the boss doesn't reveal the cause. Valentina and Jenny head to a church, their place of worship, to meet Father Francisco, who senses that something is wrong. Valentina confides in Father Francisco about the woman in white, expressing her fear and belief that she is cursed. Francisco offers some words of hope before they pray together. At the same time, Jenny, who is busy drawing a cross, starts feeling a strange wind around her. After the prayers, Valentina and Jenny go to the hospital, where tests reveal that Jenny's cancer has spread throughout her brain. The nurse explains that they will need to take different measures in her treatment before leaving. Before they can begin Jenny's treatment, another nurse walks in and confides in Valentina that their insurance company didn't cover Jenny's previous treatment. Meanwhile, Mark returns from work with Jenny's puppy and spots a skeleton artifact resembling Santa Muerte on the house's front porch. He then decides to pick it up before heading inside. In the living room, Mark is joined by Valentina, where he receives a letter, and learn about Jenny's sickness. Valentina also reveals that the hospital won't treat Jenny unless they cover her previous treatment, and Mark comforts Valentina, assuring her that everything will be okay and that they will find a way. Valentina becomes scared when she sees the skeleton artifact that Mark found outside the house but didn't know who put it there. Mark decides to go pick up Jenny from ballet, and on their way home, Jenny thanks Mark for getting her the puppy and decides to name the puppy Sweetie. The two share a father and daughter moment, but it seems Mark is troubled by something. After dropping off Jenny at home, Mark heads to a bar where he encounters his brother, Junior, who just got out of prison. Junior shows Mark a tattoo on his neck, which is similar to one he found on his front porch, revealing that it kept him safe in prison. While drinking, Mark confides in Junior about Jenny's sickness and his inability to pay for her bills. Junior then reveals he knows someone who can help him, named Miguel. He sends the address to Mark and warns him that Miguel is someone he shouldn't mess with, advising Mark to be careful. Meanwhile, we see a little girl walking in a dark forest. She comes across a scarecrow, and as she looks at it, the scarecrow comes to life. This frightens the girl, and she runs for her life with the scarecrow chasing her. Eventually, she hides behind a tree. As the scarecrow approaches her direction, she screams, only for it to turn out to be Valentina's nightmare. The next morning, while at work, Valentina witnessed the woman in the white dress removing the life from a sick boy, ultimately leading to his death. This leaves Valentina in shock with what she has experienced. She then visits Father Francisco again and reveals that she has prayed about Jenny's cancer, but things keep getting worse. She expresses her desire to question God, but Father Francisco doesn't provide an answer, leading her to frustrated and she leaves. Meanwhile, Mark visits the address Junior gave him and is escorted to a room by two guards, where he meets Miguel. One of the guards warns Mark not to cross the line after being called in by Miguel. Despite the warning, Mark attempts to cross the line but is stopped by another guard, who points out the line drawn in black. Mark reveals the reason for his visit and shows Miguel his family picture. Miguel decides to keep it and offers Mark 30 grams of money, even though Mark needed 50 grams. Mark decides to collect the money, and Miguel informs him that he has 30 days to return it. Mark thanks him and leaves. Later, at another bar, Mark confides in Junior that Miguel was able to lend him some money and gave him 30 days to return it. Junior tells Mark about a man whom Miguel lent money to, and when the man failed to repay on time, Miguel killed his wife. Mark is furious and devastated upon hearing this, and he warns him to be careful. Junior then takes Mark to a fortune teller shop, where they meet Madame Futura. She takes them to a room and tells Mark that he is here because of her daughter. She gives him cards and instructs him to shuffle them and lay them out in 3 sets, which Mark does. Madame Futura then selects 3 cards, revealing Mark's past, present, and future. She tells Mark that he is covered with a dark cloud that he cannot escape, indicating a disturbing future. Madame Futura recommends a person who can change his future for him. Mark returns home to bring his wife, leaving Jenny under the supervision of Junior. The couple drives back to the shaman's shop, the Psychic Eye, and Madame Futura leads them to a room where they meet Luke, a fellow fortune teller. Luke tells them the reason they are here, and reveals that there is a cure for Jenny's cancer. He asks how much they are willing to sacrifice, and Valentina says everything. Luke then gives them a parchment and instructs them to write down their wish and return it within 24 hours. Back at home, Valentina tells Mark that anyone she loves dies and she needs to get away from him and Jenny. Mark comforts her, and they share a hug. During this, they hear a knock at the door, and when Mark opens it, he is shocked to see Miguel's bodyguard. Outside, one of the guards tells Mark they are here to remind him of the deal, and advised him not to mess it up before leaving. Inside, Mark decides to come clean to Valentina, and reveals that he borrowed money from a rich man for Jenny's treatment, and was given a specific date to pay it back. Again, while at work, Valentina becomes frightened and sees the woman in the white dress in the mirror. The patient starts screaming for help, telling her mother to save her, and Valentina rushes back to the car. While trying to calm herself down, she is startled by a man from behind. This encounter makes her more furious, and she begins to cry. Meanwhile, Mark tells Junior that Miguel is back for his money, and blames Junior for not fully disclosing the danger of dealing with Miguel before introducing him. Mark reveals he is afraid for his family and wants to keep them safe, and Junior decides to help. Suddenly, Valentina returns home and heads upstairs while whispering to herself. Jenny runs downstairs and tells Junior that her mother is scaring her. Mark decides to investigate, and Valentina sees the woman in the mirror, causing her to smash it. Mike rushes in to see the broken mirror, and Valentina apologizes for her unusual behavior. However, Mike reveals he is scared for what she is becoming and comforts her. The couple then returns to meet Luke, who leads them to a dark room filled with white smoke. They are startled to see Luke holding a snake, and he instructs them to put the parchment in a bowl filled with red liquid. Taking one of the parchments, he begins stirring the liquid, and suddenly, Mark vanishes, and Luke tells Valentina that Mark's offer is not enough to save Jenny's life. Valentina reveals she will do anything for Jenny, and agrees to Luke's offer, a life for a life, which he confirms that her wish has been heard. Suddenly, Mark and Valentina wakes up at the same time from the nightmare, surprised to find themselves in bed. The next morning, the couple went to the hospital for Jenny's treatment, and they are surprised to hear that Jenny's previous bills have been taken care of. While waiting in the children's ward, Valentina sees the woman in a picture and in front of her. She confides in Mark about what she saw, but Mark reveals he didn't see anything. Thinking her mind is going crazy, she decides to visit Luke to get answers to her problem and tells Mark to wait for Jenny. Valentina confides in Luke about the payment of Jenny's bills and her recent nightmares. Luke instructs Valentina to stretch out her palm, and he uses a sharp object to pierce her palm and draw her blood. He then mixes the blood with the red liquid and asks Valentina who the skeleton in her closet is. Again, she has a terrifying nightmare and finds herself back in her bed. She spots the skeleton artifact in the room, but when she turns on the light, it disappears. The next morning, while Valentina is in the kitchen, she spots Jenny playing outside while holding the skeleton artifact. She rushes to Jenny and asks who gave it to her. Jenny reveals that it was a man who told her they should pray to it to protect her from the shadow watching her, before the two head back inside. Valentina and Jenny went to the hospital to receive Jenny's test results, and to everyone's astonishment, the cancer is gone, and Valentina reveals she is the one who saved her daughter. As they are leaving the hospital, they discover the hallway is empty, and suddenly, Valentina spots the woman in the white dress, prompting her to carry Jenny and flee. Back at home, Valentina noticed Jenny playing with a doll from her childhood, and Jenny reveals that a man gave it to her, and she realizes who the man is. Valentina collects the doll and instructs Jenny to go to her room before going outside to confront the man, who turns out to be Luke. Valentina asks him what he wants, and he reveals that the real power is in her before disappearing while Valentina is distracted. Mark, now aware that Jenny is free from her cure, shares a wonderful moment with her by playing piano while she dances. Valentina visits Madame Futura, who hands her a book and reveals that only the goddess of death, Santa Muerte, can save her. She then shows Valentina some strange marks on her neck and reveals she is alive because of Santa Muerte. Suddenly, Madame Futura changes to Luke, and Valentina becomes aware that Luke is behind her problems all along, and in fear, she runs away. Valentina and Mark visit Father Francisco, who comes clean about Valentina's background, and reveals when she was little, she had cancer. In a flashback, Valentina's parents, Celia and Santeros, prepare to offer a pregnant woman as a sacrifice to cure Valentina's cancer. Although Celia is against the plan, and tells Santeros there is always another way, before going after Valentina. In another scene, Celia prays to Santa Muerte before slashing her own wrist in the bathtub, leading to her death. Santeros leaves the pregnant woman in the barn and goes after Valentina, only to find her lying in a pool of her own blood, leaving him devastated. Meanwhile, in the process of freeing herself, the pregnant woman knocks over a candle, which starts a fire in the barn. She managed to escape, and Santeros returns to find the barn burning. Eventually, the building collapses, trapping him inside as he searches for the pregnant woman. Valentina, who is running away from the scarecrow, collapses on the road, and Father Francisco managed to rescue her. In the present, Father Francisco gives Valentina a box containing her mother's ashes, which he has kept for so long, waiting until she was old enough to give the ashes to her. To everyone's astonishment, Valentina's Santeros is not dead, and he reveals that he has been watching Valentina for days until he decides to show himself to her. He explains that they were able to cure her cancer by making a deal with a man, Luke, but he never knew the deal will have a side effect. Santeros reveals that Jenny had cancer because of Valentina because she was not supposed to live. He explains that Jenny was also not supposed to live, and the demon he made a deal with is after her soul. He also reveals that the woman in the white dress, Valentina has been seeing is her mother, who is trying to warn her about the demon and the curse on their family. Santeros explains that the curse will never end unless they free themselves, and the only way to do so is to bury Celia's ashes. Meanwhile, Junior, who is watching over Jenny, starts feeling something strange, and suddenly, the room starts shaking. A demonic voice can be heard, and Junior begins praying. Mark, Valentina, and Santeros drive to their old residence, and Santeros reveals that he burned down the house after he lost Celia. Unbeknownst to them, the scarecrow from Valentina's childhood is present. Santeros tells them that they need to bury Celia's ashes where she took her life, and once her soul is at rest, the demon will leave their family, and suddenly, the scarecrow comes to life. The group eventually finds where Celia took her life and bury her ashes. In the process, they see Luke, who just smiles at Valentina before walking away. Santeros quickly suspects something is wrong, and Valentina admits she made a deal with him to cure Jenny's cancer. They are interrupted by a noise in the woods, and they spot the scarecrow in the distance, prompting them to run to a barn. Mark secures the door with a plank and tells Valentina and Santeros to run upstairs while he watched the door. However, the scarecrow chants a spell which removes the plank, and the door opens. Mark battles the scarecrow, but it overpowers him and renders him unconscious before tossing him out of the barn. The scarecrow then goes after Valentina, and Santeros tries to fight it but is also knocked down. Before the scarecrow can harm Valentina, Santeros, who is back on his feet, sets a Molotov cocktail on fire before tossing it towards the scarecrow. However, the creature doesn't catch fire, only the surrounding area. Santeros fights the scarecrow again, but he gets pinned down, and the fire begins to spread. On the other hand, Valentina spots her mother's spirit, who tells her that she knows what to do, that it's the only way to set their family free from the demon's grasp. She decides to join the fight and grabs the scarecrow as the fire begins to burn the creature and Celia's spirit vanished. Meanwhile, Mark regains consciousness and witnesses the barn burning to the ground with Valentina and her father inside, which brings tears to his eyes. The next day, as Mark and Jenny drive away from a store, one of Miguel's minions watch them, and before the movie concludes, Mark is seen driving to the east, and Luke, who sees them, tells the snake around his neck that they will be back, and laughs as he walks away before vanishing. Okay guys, that's all the recap about Skeletons in the Closet from 2024. Thanks for watching, see you again in the next video.